Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so. Of course, you can find us on air, News Radio 690 KTSM 690 AM. Of course, you can also find us online, ktsmradio.com. Also live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app and on our very many social media pages where we have the full video and pictures coming up for today's show. So, of course, today is Saturday, November 12th, as we are airing this recorded episode, and today we are talking about Mount Cristo Rey, the pilgrimage that many are participating in, the rescheduling of it, but also how that's a return to tradition in certain ways this year, plus, of course, the history, the current upkeep, and how all of these things are connected whenever it comes to the very many people and generations of people and families that have taken part and taken care of the mountain and the iconic centerpiece for a lot of people here in the Borderland region. You can, of course, find us live on air, online, live streaming at ktsmradio.com, and full video, again, the El Paso History Radio Show Facebook page, YouTube channel, El Paso History TV, as well as over on some partner pages, including the great Facebook group Remember in El Paso When. And this is, of course, the place where we say Texas history begins in El Paso. We do have a history moment at the top of hour 2 coming up this week, talking about, some interesting things, including more specifically about the 1891 Rainmakers in El Paso. And of course, we'll be talking more about that and the other things, but joining us here in studio today, we are joined by Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely happy to talk about y'all, because as there have been a lot of things that have been modified or shifted or changed over these last few years, Cristo Rey feels like an eternal part of the landscape here, and of course the pilgrimage that go on to it here, central for a lot of people, and there have of course been some modifications and differences in how things have had to have been run over the last few years, but now we're talking about a change that has happened this year for the actual schedule for the pilgrimage that is, for most people seeming like it's just a change, but again, in a lot of ways, kind of like I mentioned, it's a return to tradition in its own right here. So the big headline here is that no, the pilgrimage obviously did not happen at the end of October or towards the end of it, as it kind of recently had, but now it is now going to be happening November 19th, which is closer to a very significant date given the meaning and significance behind the monument, the path, the trail, all those kind of things, right?
That's right. Over the last few years, of course, people celebrated the climb to Mount Cristo Rey and the pilgrimage to Mount Cristo Rey on the last Sunday of October, and that's been going on since the 60s. And within the last, we've had a new bishop was assigned here to Las Cruces Diocese, and he saw he's been here now going on 3 years, and this year that we're returning back to somewhat normalcy and after the pandemic, he sees fit to get back to tradition. And one of the traditions was, of course, celebrating the pilgrimage to Mount Cristo Rey, celebrating the Feast of Christ the King, which is the Solemnity of Christ, which is by the liturgical calendar and the church calendar, it's November 20th. So the closest that we could get to that day, he designated the 19th as the day of the pilgrimage, and that's what brought on the change.
So, of course, November 20th is, again, on the church calendar, the actual specific day of it. So moving that pilgrimage closer to it, it makes sense if you think about it that way. As there are many people that, of course, are, practitioners of Catholicism in town. Many people may not necessarily always think about the liturgical calendar and, the different, saints' days, feast days, celebration days, those kind of things here. So moving it closer to that, and, of course, the statue at the top there and the monument being something, of course, directly related to, again, Christ the King, as you mentioned. The name of the mountain is not just a, fancy name. It is significant for both what it is, to the people who built it, created it, and, of course, to the, modern day practitioners and the people who make the pilgrimage.
That's correct. And if you think about it, when the pilgrimage, this actual monument was dedicated back in 1940, it was finished in 1939. And dedicated in 1940, it was celebrated on the Feast of Christ the King. So the people that came in, we had clergy from all over the world that came in. There was a designate from the Pope that was designated here he was sent here to actually take place in the dedication, the blessing. So from that point, it was celebrated on in October, in November.
Right.
But after Vatican II in the 60s, when it happened, that's when the change occurred. Now, there was a lot of things that changed during that time. One of the things here in El Paso, I think, was the weather. back we used to have some harsh winters.
That's true.
You know, in November, and I think that was one of the reasons that they petitioned for it to be changed, and it was. So it's been celebrated in October, but this bishop now, you know, he's looking at returning back to the roots, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, of course, Vatican II, that very significant conference happening at the Vatican that changed a lot of things, including stuff like, you know, Latin Mass, some certain, you know, ways that things were spoken about within the church, and certain, you know, I mean, it changes that have always kind of been happening in their own right here, like the ways that, you know, the greeting of other people happens, you know, peace be with you and also with your spirit, those kind of things here. So it's in the vein of that kind of change that happened at that point. So again, returning to this point is an interesting one. And we actually do have some very interesting pictures that you all were able to find of actually the people who were there back in 1940, right?
That's correct. A few years ago, I had a lady that called my office, and she got a hold of my number off the internet, and she said she had some pictures that she wanted me to take a look at to see if by chance I knew what they were. And she had found them. The story is that she said that she found them at a thrift shop here on Donovan Drive, one of the, you know, shops down there by off of Artcraft. And she said that they were shopping, and she saw a stack of pictures that were in a box. And when she asked the store owner, you know, what those were, he said he had no idea, that they had been found in someone's home, and that was it. That's all he knew about them. So she bought the whole box, and I think she paid, if I remember correctly, I think she said maybe $35, $40, you know, something like that for the whole box of pictures. She just found them interesting. But within those pictures, you know, and we're talking probably close to 100 pictures, black and whites,
right.
4x6s, and you know, she had them she put them in a folder and tried to kind of put them in some type of order. As soon as she brought them into me, I recognized, you know, what it was, and that was the dedication of Mount Cristo Rey that were taken in 1940. So from the arrival of some of the clergy, some of the priests that got here to the train station, you know, Paso, there was pictures taken. And these, of course, images of all the priests and the clergy that came in from all over the world to celebrate this, you know, this dedication.
And I mean, even for someone, and though we are popping up some of those pictures over on our social media right now, if anyone is able to look at that safely, of course, you can find our replays over on the Very Many social media page. As we mentioned there, YouTube's one of the better ones, El Paso History TV, just because it doesn't require a login. But, I mean, some of these things might look like, okay, they're kind of old-timey and, you know, black and white, obviously, and showing that, I mean, still kind of timeless style, but definitely older style of, you know, vestments, garments by the priests here, including this one very impressive, I think that's a bishop's hat there. I mean, that's not a cardinal, obviously, so, but very ornate and very dedicated. And a lot of these things might be thinking of, like, okay, like, sure, you know, old-timey church services here, but then there's that one very obvious, like, oh, okay, that's Cristo Rey there, as they're on the backside of the monument holding that mass here. So it kind of connects it all together, at least from the one that you have.
And the picture right before that you were showing with the bishop there, is, I believe it's an archbishop.
Is that what it is?
I believe that's an archbishop there. But right next to him, you see Father Lourdes Costa, Monsignor Costa, which was the founder of Mount Cristo Rey.
So that, connects a few dots there.
So that's a dead giveaway there.
That would do it. Yeah, definitely here. So, I mean, this is a very interesting collection here that you have, that if that person out there who has these pictures is still around or still is, or by any chance listening, very interested in still getting those pictures, or at least getting better scans of them, because as good as these pictures are that we have, I mean, getting these and preserving them from posterity, because
exactly.
This part of the history is very important, even if the modern history does, of course, continue on with the monument.
Right, and I don't see what they could probably get out of them. I understand. You know, I think she tried to sell the pictures to someone. You know, she was offering them for sale. I offered her $100 right on the spot, and I said, "I'll give you $100. You double your money, and you walk away happy, and we're happy." And she wouldn't take them. So I don't know what she's intended to do. I don't know. It's been a few years now. Matter of fact, I lost the contact information. You know, but that's the whole thing, that if we can get a hold of those are pictures that I took with my phone, so I couldn't even scan them at the time.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and if we were able to scan them at least, and she would share them that way, you know, to have the actual pictures would be awesome. You know, if we were able to display them and to put them, you know, my dream, of course, is the Museum of Smeltertown and Cristo Rey and Asarco, you know, and that's one day, hopefully, I didn't hit the Powerball, you know, but
me neither.
But that's, you know, one of the dreams that I have, to open that museum and show off all the artifacts and everything that we've gathered over the years from Mount Cristo Rey in the area.
Yeah, absolutely. Didn't hit the Powerball either. Not saying I wouldn't be doing this show, but we'd have a lot more production in on the show if it wasn't the Powerball. I'm just saying. Anyway, of course, I mean, that's part of the history we're going to be talking about today, because the connection between Mount Cristo Rey, Smelter Town, the Acerco Smelter, the community around it, and how it even still exists to this day, even if it might go by the notice of a whole lot of people. That's what we'll be discussing today, of course, again, with also some of those changes going on with the pilgrimage here. Again, some of the pictures of previous years at the base that we've got coming up there right now, and people taking off that great view up the canyon towards, with that straight shot kind of lined up in between the valley there of the monument itself there up at the top there. So we're talking more about that, but again, joining us here in studio right now is Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. They want to find out more thing about y'all. One of the best places for the people to find out those details, including, some of the information, what's going to be going on, scheduling, those kind of things, and the safety information, which is very important, will be mountcristorey.com. That's MTCRISTOREY.com. And again, the pilgrimage coming up this year, Saturday, November 19th, to be, again, as we were talking about, coinciding with the Feast of Christ the King.
Right, and there's some changes to the day of the pilgrimage. We're going to do things a little bit different. The bishop has requested that we open up, that they're going to have confessions on site, which is something different. This year, people used to climb up at 4 o'clock in the morning and try to beat the crowds and everything else. So this year, the gates won't open until 9 o'clock, actually.
Really? Okay.
So we're going to try to keep people to come in to celebrate what it's all about, not just make the climb and go back down. The bishop has designated some priests that are going to be on site. We're going to have confession booths out there from 9 to about noon, and then the pilgrimage will actually start at noon, make the way up the mountains, praying the Stations of the Cross along the way, and then once they get to the top, Mass is actually going to be celebrated at 3 p.m. He wanted to make that Mass at 3 p.m. so that it counts for your Sunday Mass. So it's the Vigil Mass that it counts for Sunday. So that's the whole thing. You go up there and celebrate Mass on Cristo Rey. You don't have to go to church on Sunday.
After having made the climb there as well. So we'll talk more about that, some of those changes here, of course, and what you need to know if you want to go, but also, of course, the history surrounding it and the continued significance to this day. So taking that first break of this hour right now, you are, of course, tuned into the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. Coming out of this break, again, more of those topics, more of those focus, and the changes this year we'll talk a little bit further about in this next coming short segment after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the Juan and only margarita from the Cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home Team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Waco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC 7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. We are the El Paso History Radio Show on Facebook. Go there for our weekly promo announcements on the topics of the program each and every week. Also go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Also find this live stream, of course, but also you can find the entire series of El Paso Gold DVDs from Capstone Productions, covering more than the last couple of decades of history production and documentaries here in town, fully uploaded and free for your viewing pleasure, plus the more recent 20 ABC 7 segments from the El Paso History TV that Bernie Sargent in front of the camera. I was behind the camera for a lot of it and doing some of the back-end production, so you can check out theirs. Actually have a picture of some of the other, of course, and relevant to today, El Paso History DVDs, if you want to check that out, including El Paso's Mount Cristo Rey. But also a reminder to support some of our advertisers. Of course, Pepe's Restaurant in Canutillo, open for in-house dining, 6761 Donovan Drive. You can call Pepe's at 915-877-2152. That's 915-877-2152. Still the home of the Juan and only Margarita. Won't be able to head out there this week, but hope to see you all out there in the coming days and weeks here. But of course, joining us here in studio right now, we of course joined by Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. And of course, the committee itself, you do a lot of the very important work in making sure that, well, this site is up and running for, well, people actually able to go out to it there. Again, I just love that shot of the perfectly framed moon behind it because, I mean, the monument is pretty impressive on its own right here, but, some confluences and tricks of time, light, and framing always make it a little bit, just add that little extra bit to it. And it's no mean feat that you all do in order to keep it running and keep it accessible, because it's one thing to have something to look at, being, oh yeah, there it is. It's another thing entirely to be able to get to it. And of course, there have been some changes that you all have had to make, if only to general preparation, so to speak, for this year, because it's not as simple as just, okay, well, we'll do it a different day with the movement this year, right?
Right. The committee itself is, as we face some, I guess it's every year we face the troubles of having to repair the trail, first off, and with the rains this year, that was one of the first obstacles that we faced, is having to continuously work on that trail. And there's been truckloads and truckloads of fill dirt and gravel brought in to kind of fix it and repair it. So that's been an ongoing thing for the whole year. And as we come up to this, pilgrimage, that's the main thing that we've dedicate a lot of time to. But in doing this now, of course, the 19th now falls on a Saturday. So it's one of the differences that the first thing that we see is that now we're going to have maybe a different crowd. Before it used to be on a Sunday and people would come on. A lot of people are off on Sundays. And now, we're having an issue, maybe hopefully not, but finding volunteers to help on that day.
True.
We have a lot of things that people do on Saturdays that they may not be able to participate. So we don't know what to expect. We don't know what to expect with these changes. Hopefully it's people that, make the effort to be there. And people are always looking for an opportunity to climb. And that's the whole thing. During the year, I get the calls and people, write in, they send messages and emails about, hey, we're going to be in town this week and want to climb. Is it safe? And we tell them, you climb at your own risk,
Yep.
Any other event, any other day that we don't have an organized event, you take it upon yourself to climb up there and at your own risk. There's still incidents of, number one, injuries that do happen. And if you happen to twist an ankle, fall, or do something, break something, you're pretty much on your own if there's nobody up there, because we have no first aid in place and there's no security in place either, And even though Border Patrol is in the area, it's going to be a while before anybody can get to you, and especially if you do have cell phone service, to call for help, and that's one of the things. So changes, this year, we tell people the same thing. It's been couple years now that the organized event, has happened. People are looking forward to climbing. So now that it's on a Saturday, these changes hopefully doesn't affect the outcome and the turnout for the event.
We'll have to talk a little bit more about what you all do in order to prepare for each individual event, but as you were meant, like day of preparation, because as you were mentioning there, the way I kind of think of it is that you're dragging the mountain back up the mountain is basically what you have to do, particularly after rains and those kind of things, because anything loose tends to want to come off the mountain when these rains, particularly with the heavy or the just kind of consistent way we've been having it these years, and I'm sure over the last couple of years, including speaking about different weather patterns from the past year when we had those deluges in the last couple of years, including, sure, there was the flooding and the ocean showing up for the beach, out into, quite out towards the peaks and out Montana way. And on those salt flats, we still got a lot of that rain here, of course, here. And so I'm sure you all have had some. The restoration is not just a fancy part of your name. It's kind of the constant mission, right?
It is. It is a constant mission, and the monument itself. The mountain itself. I tell people it's erosion has taken its toll on the mountain. Yeah. There's areas where the washouts cannot be filled in, and when it starts I guess falling off, as you could say, the different areas, the rock movement and everything else, it happens naturally. There's no way to replace that, and we build dams. We try to build rock wall dams. We try to fill in some spaces. And put up rock barriers and things like that. But water is powerful, and when we have those big rainstorms, they get moved, So it's one of the things that we have to constantly battle is trying to keep the trail itself safe, for people to come up.
Yeah, absolutely, because, and safety in a couple of different ways here. Again, the physical safety of making sure it's accessible is, again, the kind of constant year-round. But then, of course, as we get closer to each of the pilgrimage days here and on the day itself here, there's a lot more, specific security measures that you all have to take, particularly in patrolling and kind of clearing it out, which is why some of those changes to, again, the way it'll happen there with gates opening at 9 will be a very important one for people to know, because you all will be taking, of course, measures before that point and leading up to a kind of are you still going to be starting out before dark as you sometimes have?
No, hopefully people don't show up that early. Because the mass and everything else is moved back now, hopefully people don't show up that early. And I don't see any reason that they show up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning. And then it used to be that people camped out in their cars in the parking lot, wake up at 3-4 o'clock in the morning and then start to climb. They were walking up the trail with flashlights. I understand, they want to beat the crowd, but at this point everything is moved back, so there may not be those early morning crowds, and no need to come that early.
But of course, y'all's efforts in just doing the clearing of the mountain, making sure everything's good for that day of, I'm sure that'll still start probably before it gets light out, right?
Right. We have the help of Border Patrol. Border Patrol every year, of course, that we've been up there, they patrol the backside of the mountain, keeping people off the backside. And that's a lot of the problems that come up. And unfortunately, it's people coming up and trying to make the cross and blend into the people that they climb up for the pilgrimage. So Border Patrol gets out there the night before, pretty much seal off the backside of the mountain, and no one comes up or down on that backside. So that way, at least the pilgrims are a little safer in knowing that there's no one on the trail that could cause any damage or do anything that they're not supposed to be doing.
Absolutely. Then again, that's why there's both signs on your website mentioning you do climb at your own risk, and also a number of them both on site at the base there and kind of on the way to the site out there. Like, hey, if you're doing this, be sure to take precautions and necessary and know that it's at your own risk. Though again, a little bit different for the actual pilgrimage day.
Right. Yeah, and there's those changes are there. The things that remain the same, we don't allow pets on that day. We've had to break up, too many dog fights and stuff up there. We've had some people get, bit by strays that are not strays, but other people's dogs.
That they let get astray.
Right, that they get astray and they go out there and bite someone. Then, of course, they start a feud there because of the dog bite. And so we just, several years ago said no more dogs, and that's it. On that day you will be turned around if you come up with a dog. Pretty simple.
Absolutely. So more of those things also mentioned, of course, over on y'all's website, mountcristorey.com. That's MTCRISTOREY.com. Again, speaking with Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee right now. Going to be talking more about the pilgrimage, the changes, and, of course, what will be happening this year, and, of course, the history connected with it a little bit more. But got to take that next break right now. So back after this break with more on the El Paso History Radio Show here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archived radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Of course, got to mention some of our other great partners in promoting different aspects of local history and regional even there. Got to make sure, particularly with the great weather that we have been experiencing, the slightly cooler temperatures, and the ability to get out and about more without having to worry about roasting by the time the sun is fully up. Celebrationofourmountains.org is a great website to find out, well, both the concept of how to celebrate our natural landscape, but also some of the specific features and visits that they are going to be doing. Some of the ones they got coming up after this airing, of course, include the introduction to the Rio Bosque Wetlands Park, bird tours, the Northern Pass Loop hike, or even visiting the historic Fort Cummings. A lot of different events they got going on just about every weekend already planned, of course, even through the better part of next year. So check that out again, celebrationofourmountains.org. You can find those details and, of course, what they're going to be going on and how you can experience parts of our natural and even just physical and human infrastructure and landscape out there. But, of course, talking about a very specific part of the landscape and another way you can get out there. Again, joined here in studio by Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. And so, again, we're talking about some of the changes that are happening with, again, this year going back to a slightly more traditional timing of the pilgrimage itself here. Again, no longer late October as it has been, but now this year, November 19th, that Saturday, with, again, gates opening at 9 a.m. But for people who haven't been out there, of course, there's not going to be anyone who has come through this region that has not noticed, of course, the feature out there. But getting out there it's a little bit of a process on its own. Making sure you have a vehicle with good tires is a very good idea.
It is. The dirt trail is pretty much a packed dirt trail, so it's, for that particular time of year, we, go over it with the tractor and try to smooth it out as much as possible, make it as accessible as possible. But you are parking on dirt. There's, of course, rocks up there. So we tell people, when you get there at least before the gates open so that you can find, adequate parking. And there's plenty of parking up there. It's just that people sometimes get a little impatient, waiting for their parking space to open or get up there. So that's one of the things, we face that challenge of directing traffic in the morning. Everybody's trying to get there and park, and, all the honking and yelling and everything else that happens, that's just natural. But we ask people to be patient, and the one thing to consider is that we are all volunteers. This committee is made up of strictly volunteers. We some of us are third generation volunteers that have been up there with this committee, and we do it because it was our family's tradition to do it. We grew up there. I grew up personally up there, and remember as probably early as maybe 8-9 years old being up there taking on weekends, and I think it was forced labor, I say, but we were up there, Sunday after church, and we'd be made to move rocks or rake the dirt or whatever it was that we were done. And ever since then, it's been something that we've continued doing. I've been up there, like I said, since 8-9 years old, and that's, going on almost 50 years now, Andrew.
Yeah, so you weren't quite around for some of those older pictures we got here, but again, the history of the reason and the connection is still pretty consistent there. Of course, we have the picture, an older one here from kind of, I would call it like the UTEP Mountains here, looking over the Asarco side, of course, with the iconic smokestacks there, but with Mount Cristo Rey squarely framed in between them as well. And that's part of the reason, if people were wondering why we are talking about, this, of course, El Paso side, but then the, of course, Diocese of Las Cruces. We mentioned here as overseeing and where some of the, the liturgical decisions are being made, those kind of things here is because of, some of the things about where people lived. The fact that, smelter town families and those that lived in the areas and around there, and the old church that was there on just about the smelter grounds, or right adjacent to it, kind of off of the western side of the plateau of the actual smelter, I think would be a good way to put it, where it was anyway, and you can still kind of see the steps as you drive by down there on Paisano and Donovan, as that kind of split makes in the transition there. But the fact of the matter is that it was established and still, again, maintained, kind of like you're saying, by the families of and connected to Smelter Town and those that lived in that area, right?
Right. The monument itself was the vision of, Father Lourdes Costa, who was the priest there at Smelter Town. And that church there, he lived on the property, and the story is that, he looking out the back window of his residence, and he envisioned this cross atop of this mountain, and that's where it all started. So he took the idea, to the parishioners of Smelter Town, which is that little community, just kind of northwest of the refinery there, and that's where it started. So that's where the volunteers have come from. A lot of the people that worked at a lot of the men that worked at Asarco were also assigned at one point to work on the trail up there. They were actually paid by Asarco to help, with the trail. So a lot of people had, a lot of investment in that mountain and the building of Mount Cristo Rey. So the families that were there, of course, when Smelter Town was knocked down back in the 70s and people scattered, throughout the city, people still came around to help at Mount Cristo Rey, and that's what it's been. So the volunteers and this committee is made up of those people that have a connection, some type of family history, with Cristo Rey, and those are the ones that, we're up there, pretty much on weekends and doing what we can to continue this tradition, and something that we've been left with. This is our our ancestors that worked up there for years. My grandfather and all the uncles and aunts that were at that time, they all participated at some point, working up there. My grandmother used to tell stories on my mom's side. This is, of course, my dad's side, but my mom's side, she was a little girl, carrying buckets of sand and cement to the top, helping, when they were actually building some of the base and stuff like that they were doing.
Absolutely, because, a labor of love and a labor of faith has been pretty much defining of these efforts throughout and ever since the beginning of it. And again, that continued importance can be seen as people are going to, again, be able to make the pilgrimage that has been rescheduled for November 19th this year. And, I think it would be fair to say that a lot of change is going to be coming because of that, if only because of the rescheduling, but also, kind of like you mentioned, the fact of the matter is that it hasn't really been able to happen in the same way. Of course, the mountain has been there. People have been able to, at their own risk, go up outside of the organized events. And I, within the last couple of weeks, was over kind of in the Montecillo area and saw a couple of lights up on the mountain in a couple of different points along the obvious trail. Would not recommend that personally, but if you're forewarned is forearmed, and if you're going to make decisions, at least do it with open eyes. Point is that actually holding the event like this, being the first time in a couple of years, and of course the first time now on this new date, I'm sure there are going to be more challenges that you're all going to be anticipating for this time around, right?
Right. The challenge is, number one, is going to also, we're considering the weather. It's going to be colder in November.
That's true.
Bundle up. Bundle up in layers, dress in layers. That way, if it gets a little warm, and looking at the forecast now, it's going to be in the 70s. So we're not looking at at something, freezing weather at this point. I think it was 69 to 72 was the projected forecast, for that day on the 19th of November, which is crazy for El Paso, but it is a little warmer now. So, that's one of the things, and the light is another consideration. If Mass is going to be at 3, hopefully we're done by 4:15 with Mass. By the time people get up there, it may start getting dark up there, so that's one of the challenges that we're going to face, and we're going to see how that works and be able to get everybody down off the mountain safely.
Of course, as we approach, the solstice, the days are still getting shorter here. So even as you're hearing this episode as it is broadcasting, take that in consideration. So things I always recommend to people is good walking shoes. I mean, hiking shoes are good as well, but I mean, the trail, as much as you are definitely summiting the mount there is, I mean, it's a pretty, as you all do the constant effort for, not exactly a rocky trail. I mean, there are going to be aspects of it. It could be loose stuff on there, and there's always, every year I've been out there, someone trying to go the quote-unquote hard way, which, again, would not recommend because the trail is there for a reason, and you all do a pretty good job at trying to make sure that it stays a trail and stays improved that way. But, I mean, just knowing you're going to be moving, how long is the actual trail? I always forget.
The actual trail is 2.25 miles long. Mm-hmm. So 2.25 miles, each way, of course. And we do have those people that try to take those shortcuts, and those are the ones that normally get injured. Mm-hmm. That is a treacherous area, and if they're not used to, rock climbing and I mean, there's loose, stones and everything else along the way. So, not only mention that, the cactus itself, we had one guy that fell right through a cactus bush, and of course the results were not pretty, but, that's, they take a shortcut and that's unfortunately what they face.
Yes, so again, do it. I mean, we're talking about a very stark area here. Have an aerial picture here somewhere. I'll pull up in a second of what the area actually looks like from the air. But I mean, even just looking from the base there, as we've got up towards the mount here, it's pretty stark. It's pretty severe terrain, as it is. This old, never quite technically a volcano, but definitely called out a shape down there, and so staying on the trail is not even just a good idea, but the better idea. And if you really wanted to do the purpose of the pilgrimage, and I mean, you're also going to be going through, say, the Stations of the Cross. Those are along the trail. So if you wanted to go for those kind of purposes, and again, the faith part of this, stick to the trail.
That's correct.
Then I would definitely what we'll recommend there. So I got to take that next break of this hour right now. Coming out of this break, talk a little bit more about, of course, the event, the day, and the continuing history and connections to the founding of the monument and of the pilgrimage and all of those things. So stay tuned. More here on the El Paso History Radio Show after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the Juan and only margarita from the Cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home Team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally,
thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. Of course, I want to mention some of our other great partners in promoting different aspects of local El Paso history and in different audio ways as well. Even Rick Kern's music podcast, Talk and Rock Radio. That's out on talkandrockradio.com, where friends meet at the intersection of life, inspiration, and music, and talking a lot about some of the musical history in its own right and the names that you might recognize that came through and produced out of El Paso, such as the Bobby Fuller 4 and a whole lot more. And of course, Rick, having previously produced the Border Legends tour and still keeping that spirit alive, had a chance to have a hand in myself in doing the production of that for a couple of years there, but you can still hear about it and a lot of interesting remembrances that he does over there. Again, talkandrockradio.com. That's talkandrockradio.com to see his latest episodes and, the conversations he is having and those kind of things there. But in the meantime, of course, I have to remind you about one more of our advertisers and supporters here. Call 915-588-1850. That's 915-588-1850 for Patrick Tuttle, Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate. Patrick is an excellent realtor to go to for El Paso homes for sale or rent. Has done a lot of great work for me and my family in terms of getting us in the houses that we currently occupy and making sure that even friends of mine have had their locations that they are wanting rented out, done so quickly, efficiently, and to their satisfaction. So a great place to go to, and for his team for El Paso homes for sale or rent or to manage them for you. Again, 915-588-1850 for Patrick Tuttle, Coldwell Banker Heritage Real Estate. But again, joining us here in studio right now, we're still joined by Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee, talking about the very many things of both changing, but also traditions continuing when it comes to the pilgrimage this year. Just want to remind you all again, happening this year on Saturday, November 19th. So changes in a couple of ways, both to the date, also the day of the week, as you mentioned there. And so that is leading to some changes in the way it is. We've mentioned a couple of times, but just want to drive it further home here that it's going to be gates open at 9. So if anyone is planning to circumvent that, don't, basically.
Right. We're telling people, there's no need to come that early. Mm-hmm. The event starts, later on where people do come up. And I understand people want to come up and make the trip and get back down. I think they defeat the purpose of what it's all about. The Mass up there is something to really behold, because it's out open air, top of this mountain that you're listening, hearing Mass, and that's the one thing that we miss out there, is that people come up and they visit for 5 minutes and then go back down, which is not the traditional purpose, and we want people to come up there and enjoy their time, but also to take part in the festivities. Confessions, of course, are going to be available on site, which is something completely new. We have different confessionals that are going to be set up, so people can come in. There's different priests that are going to come in to hear confession, and so that's an opportunity for you to reconcile before you do, make the climb and make the actual walk, and then wait for Mass up there at 3:00 in the afternoon.
Absolutely, because, as much as we've been talking about some of the physical aspects, some of the logistical changes that have happened, the religious significance is inseparable from anything that we are talking about here, because that's the entire reason that this trail, that the monument at the top of it, and all of the things involved with it continue to exist. And, that significance for you all cannot be understated as well, and the reason that we're talking about things like the diocese involved in here, it's not just, they're in charge of it and they just kind of take care of it. That's, again, that is very much woven into the foundation, both literally and physically, about and metaphorically, of why this exists. Because, of course, the mountain, the actual rocks would be there regardless, but the reason that we do this pilgrimage is not just because it's a pretty sight, but because of the influence that has been exerted and the, again, significance that has been infused into it. We mentioned Station of the Cross along the trail, those kind of things. So it is meant to be a pilgrimage. Again, we're not just using that phrase flippantly here. It is religious significance.
That is it, and that's why it was built. Monsignor Costa's vision was to have people climb to this mountain, to pray, offer thanks for their promises that were made, their promesas, which is the promises that were made and favors that were granted. And that was the whole purpose of this, pilgrimage that was made. We were in a situation, Andrew, where in this area, other monuments, other shrines, the ones in Denver, El Jubilete in Mexico, the different ones, have visitors every single day.
Right.
They're in a situation where they can have these visitors every single day. It puts us in a different perspective because we're right on that border.
Right.
And the history, and I think the history of assaults and robberies and everything that used to happen exist. I mean, it's actually something that, that happened. I was a police officer back, in the 90s. And yeah, we would be up there and chase people that were up there to rob people on the trail itself. So we, that you can't erase that history. And now, of course, we have a little bit of help from Border Patrol that's up there patrolling the border, but they're not providing they're not there to provide security as it's meant to be.
Yeah.
So for us, this is a one event a year that is organized for the purpose of making this religious pilgrimage to the top. And with that, looking at it that way, here's an opportunity to climb it where it's organized, where you have people that are, watching out for your security. We'll have refreshments, we'll have concessions, we'll have maybe, food snacks and things of that nature that you can come up and at least get something to drink and something to eat, on the way back down, maybe at the top as well. Grab a drink when you make it to the top. Things like that, we're taken care of. But that's the one day a year, other than the second largest pilgrimage now is on Good Friday,
right?
Where we expected, on Good Friday is usually between 8,000 to 10,000 people, And in the past, on the last Sunday in October, we'd have almost 20,000 people, and it had been, a few years since we hit that. But that's what we're looking at. So the change now, I think this bishop, makes the change, and I see one thing that's positive is that the church is involved again. For many years. The control of Mount Cristo Rey was under the direction of San Martin Church here in Sunland Park. And the priest there, the clergy that was assigned there, really never took an interest in Cristo Rey, even though it was a mission to their church.
Right.
They pretty much let the committee do what we did and never really got involved. So the involvement now from the church and this new bishop, Peter Baldacchino, coming here, and making these changes and wanting to get involved, he has the vision of what Monsignor Costa has, and that was to draw people in, to have people up there, and I'd love to see it, to where we could celebrate every single day, and have it at least as a tourist attraction that people would come from all over the world, the country and the world to visit, and we get those calls. For me, I don't would say it's an embarrassing thing, but it's a concern when I get the calls.
Right.
And I tell people, if you're going to come, you climb, but you climb at your own risk. And then they start asking the questions. Well, we're here I just had a call from New Orleans a couple days ago. And this family's coming down for business, and they wanted to see some of the sites, and they called about Mount Cristo Rey, and I said, you can climb it during the week. I said, but you do climb it on your own. There's no security. What do you mean there's nobody up there? I said, there's nobody up there. There's no first aid. There's no one in place in case something happens.
I mean, it's both about the history, but also the location of it. Pop that picture up here, but we got to take that next break to hit the top of the hour here. So coming out of this in the top of the hour news, we'll be talking more here, of course, with Ruben and, of course, about what is going on with Mount Cristo Rey. A little bit more into some of those, I guess, logistical concerns in their own way, but more just location aspects of it, and of course the history here. So Ruben's sticking around with us, and you stick around there as well. Back with more on the El Paso History Radio Show after this top of the hour news break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about El Paso history for free there on our YouTube channel. This includes Legends of El Paso's Mountains, Gunfights of the Old West, El Paso's Waco Tanks, Mexican Revolution sites in El Paso, and 8 more TV documentaries produced by El Paso filmmaker Jackson Polk since 2001. And at youtube.com/El Paso History TV, you can watch for free 20 short videos we produced that were broadcast on ABC7 KVIA TV newscasts. This series is called El Paso History TV and features Spanish missions and churches on El Paso's Mission Trail, plus the Guadalupe Mission in Juarez, Mexico. That church was built in 1659 and is the oldest known adobe building on the El Paso Juarez Valley. It still welcomes Catholic worshipers today. Go to El Paso History TV on youtube.com. You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Bainey, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexican.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. Of course, going to be continuing our conversation about Mount Cristo Rey, the history, the pilgrimage, the changes happening for it this year, but of course the continuing efforts of the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee in just a moment. But starting off hour 2 of the program, as we usually do, with a history moment from documentary filmmaker Jackson Polk, talking this week about the 1891 Rainmakers here in El Paso.
Working on the theory that explosives could cause rainfall because many war battles have been followed by rain, the U.S. Department of Agriculture conducted experiments in rainmaking in 1891. They appropriated $9,000 toward carrying out experiments in drought-stricken areas. After some possible success in Midland, Texas, they came to El Paso, and the town held its breath. That summer, El Paso was in the middle of a long drought that had dried up the ranges. Cattle were dying by the hundreds. The area was faced with ruin. The idea was that if enough dynamite was set off and enough bombs exploded in the air, rain would be shaken out of the atmosphere, or something like that. They cited instances during the Civil War where rain had followed the intense explosions of battle. On September 17, 1891, burros carrying loads of dynamite and other explosives were driven upon Mount Franklin. The next day, the war on the clouds commenced at 10 a.m., with scattered explosions on the mountain and some from balloons in the air. Around 3 p.m., the explosions grew more frequent. By 4 p.m., the battle in the sky was on in earnest. The concussions caused by the explosions were so terrific that they shook buildings in the center of the city. The attack on the skies continued until 8:15 that evening, from the summit of Mount Franklin down to a point near what is now Kern Place. No rain resulted, but a heavy dew was reported the next day. I'm Jackson Polk with this history moment for the El Paso History Radio Show.
Also, of course, have to mention some of our other great partners, particularly the great partner in El Paso history work, Barbara and Given Bainey, the owner and operator of the great Facebook group Remember in El Paso When. You can go there for archive pictures galore, topics and discussion on things often related to the programs that we have coming up each and every week. You can also see our promo announcements there as well. But please remember that these administrators have worked hard on researching the photos with our history attached and keeping the group on task as well. More than 33,000 members at last count, and it's no mean feat to keep them on track either. So when you use their photos, they please ask that credit be given to their site, and of course, much credit to be given to in general to Chief Admin, Owner, and Historian Barbara Given Bainey, affectionately known as BGB. Also admins Rick Duncan, Rick Nahara, Margaret D. Smith, and moderators Ben Vincent. A lot of work goes into, again, keeping such a sizable group on task and not being just full of spam like too many other Facebook groups I can consider over on that same site. So again, if you want to, they're always looking for a few more good hands to help out with that. So please find them, join yourself, and reach out if you want to be involved with it. Again, Remember in El Paso When. But of course, joining us here still in studio, we are joined by Ruben Escandon with, of course, the Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. And restoring is, again, an important part of the name, because keeping that monument, the grounds, the trail, the base of it, all of these things operating here on a completely volunteer basis often is, as much as you all try to be proactive, it's a lot of fixing things, and particularly with other rains, different from the one we were talking about during that history moment there. You're not having to deal with literal explosions, but there have been instances over, particularly the last couple of years, when there have been very heavy rains, and they have, sometimes it has made it almost literally inaccessible up there, and so you'll have to do a lot of work to keep that going, right?
Right, that's an ongoing thing that we do, is the trails, have to be maintained in order to allow people to continue the climb, and that's one of the things. I knew a guy used to say that dirt up there used to have more miles on it than the Jeeps did. I think it was your dad.
That sounds about right here. And you do all have the Jeeps here. These, sometimes even that's a slightly newer one, but you even have some of the old Willys Jeeps that you all take up there, is right?
Right. The newer ones are the 46 model and the 53 model. I think that was the newer ones.
The newer ones, absolutely. Here, a couple examples here, and you got these kind of custom carts because of logistics and human logistics. You do often cart like a couple of porta-johns up to the top there because you prefer people to use that. Then, if nature calls, it's going to call wherever it does. So you want to make sure that there are some facilities, though it's not exactly improved, I guess, would be not to give people the wrong idea of what's at the top there, particularly during pilgrimage days.
Right, we do take some of the porta potties to the top just to make it accessible for people, and we're telling people this year, to use the potty before they start coming up, even though we'll have a few of them, and always we have lines on those porta potties. That's ridiculous, but we do use those Jeeps, and they're specially modified trailers that the guys have actually built, to be able to carry those porta potties and the equipment that is used up there. So a lot of preparation goes into this, not just getting out there and opening up the gates and letting people climb. So there's a lot of things that the committee starts doing in preparation for this day. Not only the trails, but signage and letting people know that. You can't bring your pets up here. There's things, where the parking is designated. We have the people that are up there, directing traffic and things like that. So there's a lot of things that go into it. Preparation for the concessions itself, being up there to order ice and getting the bins and ordering the sodas and everything else that we provide up there. And that's how this committee pretty much finances itself. It maintains itself, by the fundraisers that we do, during that day. The collection during the Mass goes strictly towards, Mount Cristo Rey, so we ask people to be generous in their donations, especially because it is going towards the upkeep and maintenance of Mount Cristo Rey. So the Jeeps itself, they need gas, they need maintenance, they need, repairs constantly. And being that they're such old models, they're constantly needing repairs. But those are kind of the only type of models that really fit on that trail, such a narrow trail up there. That we have to make sure that we, keep those Jeeps running.
Absolutely. Again, it is a narrow trail. They're talking about, there's a vehicle going up there. that must be, there's room for one vehicle to go up there in a lot of places, and it is not a simple process. It's still a little bit of a harrowing drive even on its own there, because, and like you mentioned, specially modified trailers, narrow gauge is the not exactly right phrase there, but it gives the better idea of how it is, pretty, tight passes in a lot of area here. And so again, the terrain, I finally got that picture pulled up here of the aerial view, the satellite view more specifically, of Mount Cristo Rey and the grounds around it. I think a lot of people don't necessarily get the actual geology we're talking about here. The phrase that I love to use of what Mount Cristo Rey is, geologically speaking, is a hyperbissal andesite pluton, which means that it was a volcano that never quite happened. Like it had all the underground formations and even bulged up. If you had looked well back into the mists of history, essentially would have looked like a large dome. And what we're left with here, again, towards the erosion story, is that all of the softer stuff wore away, dirt washed away over the eons. And what we're left with, if you again look at the satellite view, is this kind of egg shape. It's this, all of the foothills that we think around it are actually in this circular or more like oval type of pattern, with the actual mount there in the center of it marked by the blue mark we got there as essentially plumbing of the volcano that never happened. And that is the summit, and that is the peak that people are going up to. So by taking a look at this view of what Cristo Rey actually and the grounds around it are, it's, again, the fact that we're able to make anything work on that kind of terrain is kind of amazing.
It is. I mean, the building of this monument and the trails and everything else that was done was for the time frame that it was done. It was just a work of art all the way around,
Absolutely. And again, the fact that it was done by essentially a community coming together to do this thing, this act of devotion, as you mentioned, the parish priest there looking out the steps of the church at the edge of the Asarco smelter. Again, that picture of the actual church as it existed back at this point in time. Again, this decades ago. I don't think I have the exact date there on that picture, but certainly the time when the Asarco and smokestacks and smelter were all fully up and operating. So making that decision to then modify the landscape around you in order to, and even the community that is also in the shadow of it, and be able to look up to it here. And that would be what we're actually looking at there, Paisano Road, going right next to where, again, people may be thinking, wait, where are those buildings now? They no longer exist, because that is now largely completely graded and remediated land.
It is. Back in the 70s, when they discovered that there was lead contamination, or that the ground was contaminated, is when they condemned that whole area and have had people move out. So now, they've remediated the area and still up for sale as far as I understand, and no one's really come forward interested in the property. But that area has a history, that was where all of this came about. The families that were born there or that were raised there and helped build Mount Cristo Rey. I'd love to see it as a park maybe one day, with the streets installed, I guess, or outlined at least, so we could remember those people that live there, and it'd be a awesome tribute to the history of Mount Cristo Rey and Smelter Town itself.
That would be interesting there. I think to my understanding as well, diesel contamination is more than a little bit a part of it. So there's a lot of issues with the land itself here. So residential, again, probably not, but as a site to visit and understand the history of, definitely, potentially. I could see that happening, again, particularly if only for the view that you then get that you're hard-pressed to find from anywhere else here. Again, this old black and white photo we're showing of when there were still buildings there, you can just see the peak of Mount Cristo Rey past the foothills there. Very recognizable once you know what you're looking at. And, of course, along the banks of the Rio Grande itself. So a lot of history there. And again, just to put a finer point on it here, the history of the people who lived there and put together the monument and the trail towards it, that is the history that continues on for the Restoration Committee this day. And something that, it's a part of your own personal history as well, right?
It is. Growing up there at the base, I grew up in La Calavera, which is the little suburb of Smelter Town.
Right. Yeah.
It's on the other side off Executive, and that's where we grew up. So for us, it was part of our upbringing to be up there at Cristo Rey. We used to play on the grounds of Asarco as well. It was just up the road from us, so we'd climb up that mountain and play up there in the slag pits. So that was back in the day. No one worried about any kind of contamination, or we were too dumb to know. That was what was happening. But that was our history, and growing up there makes it a part of our life and everyday living, and that's been our interest. Like I said, third generation volunteers, and there's several of us that have been up there, for seeing their grandparents work up there, their parents, and now we're up there as well.
Absolutely. So again, the work it takes to keep it going here, and the reason you all do it will again be on feature. As again, that date has changed. The pilgrimage coming up this year, Saturday, November 19th. Again, to be closer to the liturgical date of the feast of Christ the King, because that is one of the ways it was originally organized. Is again further underscored by those fascinating dedication pictures that you have. And one thing I want to make sure to mention here is that actually the mass at the top here, you can see the dedication mass that you were able to take that picture of the picture of. And people may be wondering, well, where is the Christ figure on this one? Because the actual kind of altar and the actual location of where the mass can have, there's a little bit of flat, believe it or not, there's a little bit of flat space up at the top right next to the peak where this is here, and it's on the opposite side of where the actual, Christ the Redeemer figure is.
Right.
And so it's on the back side of it here, and yeah, there's just enough room for a few people. How many people would you say could comfortably fit at the top here?
I'd probably say during the mass we have maybe 400 people up there.
Okay.
300 to 400 people, I'd say, throughout the whole mountain. I mean, there's a whole area where the altar was built, behind the monument that that accommodates, I would say not more than 150 people throughout the mountain itself. And one of the things, Andrew, is that the vision of Monsignor Costa in building this, has actually been documented. A few years ago, we had a niece of Monsignor Costa that gave my father a box of documents and just odds and end papers that were there that belonged to Monsignor Costa. And of course, my dad, gave it to me and said, "Hey, take a look at this." And it sat in my garage for probably 2-3 years until a couple of years ago that I started going through the box and to see what it was. In this box, I found a actual written. It was a typewritten document, more like a diary of a daily affirmation of what Monsignor Costa started and the actual building of Mount Cristo Rey. So he outlines exactly what we're talking about, that he envisioned this pilgrimage happening on this particular day and climbing through this, through this process and what it was and making the pilgrimage and a sacrifice for people to climb. And when he hired Orbici Soler to actually sculpt the monument, no one ever spoke about building a trail. And Soler did not want a trail built to the top.
Right.
He wanted people to climb, straight up the mountain, and that was part of the sacrifice that they were going to make, despite injuries or whatever else would go. When he went to Austin to hand select the limestone that was going to be used in the monument, that's when Monsignor Costa had some of the parishioners there. They bought a bunch of dynamite, and they started building this road and blowing up the trail. So when Soler came back, he actually almost quit the project because he was so upset that they had dynamited this mountain to build, the trails up there. So that was one of the things that, that is actually documented in what Monsignor Costa envisioned. And the top of this mountain, where behind the statue where we have the altar now, he envisioned a marble top. He wanted to install or have installed a marble area that people would come up there to enjoy Mass and sit out there in a seating area for everybody. And that, of course, has never been done. But the crown itself wasn't part of the original build, and it was built in 1989 for the 50th anniversary. So there's little things that have changed that coincide with his vision. And now we can honestly say that we have the proof that this is what he wanted, because it's actually written in his diary of what he had planned for Mount Cristo Rey.
Interesting that you mentioned that, absolutely, because the crown that we have there again in the one of the cover images for the El Paso's Mount Cristo Rey documentary, again over on El Paso History TV on the YouTube channel. But there's a lot more that has gone into it, but we'll have to talk a little bit more about that. Got to take that next break right now. Again, talking here with Ruben Escandon, of course, with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee, because again, the actual physical and religious significant parts of the monument, of the trail, of the pilgrimage are, again, inseparable from the entire concept we're talking about here today. As, again, there's a slight return to tradition, could be argued, as part of what is being changed with that date, again, November 19th. But got to take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, more talk with Ruben and more talk about what the history is here. So stay tuned. More on the El Paso History Radio Show on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archived radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archived pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. Another sponsor, of course, to remind you about Mission Del Rey Southwest. Go there with out-of-town visitors for souvenirs, jewelry, gifts, and decor items. They have great discounts and a lot of things in their clearance area, but a lot of new products always coming in, including patio furniture, cast aluminum, beautifully patinaed and all that kind of stuff here. It looks a lot like cast iron furniture, but it's a lot less likely to crush your foot if you accidentally drop it on there, but it's still beautiful. And a lot of other products, Native American jewelry and craft items, as well as literal flavors of the Southwest with food items that they are constantly being restocked with. So go check them out. Again, out-of-town family, friends, or even just get the literal or figurative flavor of the Southwest for your own home decor and kitchen items. MissionDelRey.com is where you can go to find their online store where they will ship around the world. Or again, their 12,000 square foot showroom there on Lee Trevino. Mention the El Paso History Radio Show for a discount. Again, Lee Trevino and Pelicano. Just look for the Mission Del Rey sign. Better if you go down Pelicano to find it a little bit closer, because if any questions about that, the number to call there is 915-440-2140. That's 915-440-2140. Of course, joining us here in studio still is Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. Again, talking about it on the occasion of the upcoming pilgrimage that will be coming up here at a little bit different time than usual, November 19th. And we've been talking a lot about some of the features of the trail, some of the things that people can see. But of course, going up to the top and coming back down is one of the core ideas, but don't want to neglect talking about what is along the trail as well, including the Station of the Cross and many other shrines, right?
That's correct. Stations of the Cross are, of course, depicted along the trail all the way up to the top, the 14 Stations of the Cross. And then along the trail also, we have some altars that have been built. And these altars were part of the original design. We have St. Joseph and Our Lady of Fatima, the Our Lady of Guadalupe that was also up there. And over the years, the two shrines to St. Joseph and Our Lady of Fatima were towards the back of the monument. And because of the proximity of the border and the issues that we were having up there with robberies and things like that, those statues were decommissioned and they were moved onto the actual trail. So St. Joseph is towards the first part of the trail as you start, and then we have also Our Lady of Fatima. So the two other shrines, and there's little trails that lead to those that are off the traditional path, but they're very accessible as well. And then the Stations of the Cross, there's 14 Stations of the Cross all the way up to the top. So during the pilgrimage itself, on the 19th, the priest will stop at each Station of the Cross, and they will pray, reflect on the event that occurred at that station, and then make their way up to the top as well.
So, of course, again, the religious significance here. So for people that are beyond, or maybe just be only really having considered the, sightseeing or the, a place to visit in town kind of aspect, how would you describe it for someone who is wanting to know more about the religious significance, about, what this means to the people? I mean, people may be familiar or sometimes not. I'm always surprised by what the Stations of the Cross are, but of the entire meaning of it, we mentioned, phrases such as sacrifice or, giving, penance or thanks or those kind of things here. So for someone who is completely unfamiliar with the way it works for this site and this pilgrimage, how do you kind of begin to describe it to them?
I think it's a little different. One of the things that people, personally, I think that, people have gotten away from the purpose of Mount Cristo Rey and actually understanding, what it was. It was celebrated every year on this last Sunday in October, was a kind of a tradition, but it was more of a party type of environment, and that's one of the things that we actually got away from. Crossing that bridge, as soon as you start that trail, you're entering sacred ground. I mean, this is an area where it's a solemn tribute to what we're doing up there, and of course, praying along the way. We have people playing music and blaring their hip hop or whatever it is along the trail, which normally we comment on and tell them that this isn't the place to do it. But hopefully we return back to what the tradition was, to make a solemn procession up to the top, praying along the way, forgiveness of sins, and coming up there to reconcile and give yourself a fresh perspective on life and what it's all about, and then of course to stand at the foot of that 40 plus foot statue up there, it's a feeling that comes over you that you really can't explain. I mean, you have to live it until and to understand what it's all about.
Absolutely here. So again, that's Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee, talking about, of course, what is coming up for this pilgrimage. Again, just to remember the date here, Saturday, November 19th. Probably going to be a lot of people going out there, and gates open at 9 a.m. and, of course, the Mass going through 3 p.m., happening at 3 p.m. that day. So a lot of time to go out there that day and experience this as well. So got to take that next break now. Coming out of this break, talking more about particularly, the monument itself and what it takes to keep that going, because talked a lot about the trail here so far, because that's the part that people more physically interact with, but the reason that people go up to the top is its own reason. So stay tuned for more on the El Paso History Radio Show after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Gibbon-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano, and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Donovan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Donovan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. Some of our other great partners in promoting different aspects of El Paso history, particularly the program here, El Paso Inc., El Paso's Business Journal. You can find our weekly promo announcements in print there just about each and every week. Plus, of course, their in-depth reporting and important stories affecting us here in the borderland. They, of course, mention things such as, well, the pilgrimage we're talking about today. But again, to get El Paso Inc. available for home or business delivery, go to elpasoinc.com, where you can get your subscription, set up your delivery, or just see the articles online for yourself. Again, elpasoinc.com. Do appreciate their support here in our mission to talk about El Paso's history. But again, joining us here in studio, we do have Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. And we've talked a lot about the trail and the kind of physical aspects that people will be most interacting with. I mean, the, roughly, 2 miles and change up and back is a lot of trail work, and you're doing that. But of course, the thing at the top, the actual monument there, the Christ the Redeemer statue, is actually, it's the focal point here. Though it also, people may be wondering, looking at some of the older and the dedication mass picture there, realizing that the actual positioning of the Christ figure itself here is not towards where you approach it. It technically faces away from you, but it's positioned in a very specific way, right?
Right, it's positioned facing east, and they wanted the sculptor and the excuse me, the actual priest, the Monsignor, wanted it, facing east. And keep in mind, we call this El Paso's Mount Cristo Rey. And why is it El Paso's? Because it was built by El Pasoans, for El Paso. And back in the day when it was built, there was only one diocese here in the area, and that was the El Paso diocese that covered southern New Mexico and everything else. In 1982 is when the Diocese of Las Cruces was established, and there, because the monument actually sat in Sunland Park, New Mexico, the ownership was transferred to Las Cruces, and that's where the Las Cruces diocese comes into play with now the control over Mount Cristo Rey. But the monument itself, and Bishop Ramirez, the previous bishop here in Las Cruces, used to joke about it. We used to tell him that it's facing El Paso because it's ignoring Las Cruces. so that's one of the things. But it faces east towards the sun to catch that sunrise. And when he sculpted that, the face of Christ, he wanted that natural sunlight. He would Soler would carve early morning to get that light and get that perspective that he wanted on the statue, and that's why it's facing east the way it is.
Yeah, so that's why kind of looking towards what, particularly at that point, was. There's been a lot more development of the city kind of up, and there's an argument that we can now connect to Las Cruces. At the very least, the roads are better, I'm sure, than it was in 1940. But the idea is that towards, the center of the population here and through the El Paso Juarez Valley, and looking towards, the kind of core of those cities is the way that it is. But another thing I want to make sure that we mention it about, I think it's very important to do so, about the Christ figure in this case, is that, yes, of course, the cross is prominent, but it's again, you keep using the Christ the Redeemer figure name with this because he is not, so to speak, attached to the cross. Yes, physically it is, one and conjoined to a piece of actual rock and limestone there, but the figure itself here, it is not a
crucified. It is not a crucified Christ, is this tradition. Every time you see a cross with Christ on it, you see the crucified, Christ. And what this is, Christ the Redeemer, this is a resurrected Christ, and he sits in front of the cross instead of being nailed to the cross.
Right.
So this is more of a resurrection type of monument, which is unique to the whole landscape, and not only the landscape, but in the tradition of the faith itself. You don't see many that are like this, that it's not nailed to the actual cross.
And again, that was part of the, further significance done by both the parishioners, the Monsignor, as you mentioned, and the sculptor. And even to further kind of underscore that, at the bottom of it, you can kind of see there on screen here, where you can see, the bottom of the robe and the feet of the Christ figure there, that it's actually kind of not even really touching the cross anymore. It's on this kind of like cloud shape.
Right. It's a cloud shape that was also carved out of the limestone. And we're talking 40 tons of Cordovan limestone that was used at that time, to build this. And the sculptor, Bici Soler, actually traveled to Austin, Texas, to a quarry, and hand selected and started carving actually in Austin. and then loaded it by rail car and brought it here to El Paso and unloaded at the base of the mountain, to do this. So, this limestone, one of the things that we've faced over the years has been vandalism, with graffiti and everything else on that cloud that we're saying at the foot of the Christ itself. People for whatever reason see fit to climb it and carve their name into it. Of course, it is limestone, so it's very pliable, very carvable material, and they easily damage it. So we have to go out there, and every time that we try to take this carving out or whatever name they put up there, whatever it is that they put into this, it damages and takes away from the actual monument and the value of what we have up there.
And there's also been other, let's call them weather concerns beyond just even the trail going away. Of course, we are talking about and is again very obvious from wherever you look at it here, that it's a high point with not a lot surrounding it. Even if we have the old Osaka Smart stack in the front there, I mean, it's a peak, and this is at the tippy top of that peak. So what I'm getting at here is lightning has happened, and there has been lightning damage over the years occasionally, right?
Right. 1989, it was actually hit by a lightning strike on the arm, and the whole arm, one side of the actual monument, fell. So, we were able to hire some people to come up, an artist to come up and reconstruct that arm there as you're facing the monument on the left side, and it was reconstructed there on the end, and it's withheld pretty well, but damage by natural forces, of course, rain, everything else takes its toll on the monument itself.
And so that has been, I'm just trying to imagine, because particularly since that, 40 tons of limestone being brought up there in very unimproved, was the trail existing by the time that they actually started building the statue?
It was, they had started the trail already. Okay. They had started blasting the trail already, and then by the time he loaded, brought it, they had finished the trail already.
Okay, so it's not quite up the side of the cliff here, but I'm sure that, what did they actually use to bring up the limestone at that point in time?
There was a small Caterpillar tractor that was I think they donated for the use of it, and that's what they would pull the blocks up on a little cart that they would take it up to the top. And then there's pictures of actual burros taking materials up there as well. So there's different means of doing that. To load to raise the blocks actually on the statue, they built scaffolding and a little trolley system with little rail cars that were taking those pieces up to the top.
Wow. So, and of course, doing that these days, it repairs not the full 40 tons, but still, it's not exactly like limestone is light stuff.
Right. A little heavy to reconstruct.
And you all have also made a good do with even the damaged parts of it. Replacing it and repairing it, of course, but even the parts that were not able to be immediately reused for it, because you can't exactly just glue it back together. You need to do replacing with bigger chunks. You've even made some commemorative plaques and things like that in the past from the leftover pieces, so to speak, right?
There was. Some of the volunteers gathered those pieces that were broken off, and they carved out little plaques, little crosses that were actually mounted on plaques, and for special occasions they would be presented to donors and to other people that contributed. But those were, every little piece was utilized, in some kind of commemoration to what it was, So actually, some people own a piece of that limestone that actually fell during that time.
One other thing that people have maybe remembered, have seen, or may have heard about recently is that there has been a lot of, besides, of course, the physical aspect, on the trail, the monument, the maintenance on it, then the graffiti or the vandalism recovery methods that we've talked about here. There have also been attempts to, display it better, including lighting over the years. And there's been at least a couple attempts previously that I've been aware of, and at least one more that has been mentioned in the region more within the last year or so. Has anything come out of that more recently?
Not that we've heard. There was, unfortunately I couldn't be there at the presentation, the meeting that they had to make this proposal to the committee. And there was several things that were never answered in how they would maintain this lighting. The efforts have been made. In 1989, when the crown was actually built around the base, the crown was equipped with electrical conduit, and we had a local electrical contractor that came out and installed some big heavy duty spotlights that were able to light the monument, which was awesome for the first few months of its existence. There was a portable generator that was installed up there, and encased in a steel and cement concrete bunker, and it didn't last very long. the generator was stolen. Even the wires out of the concrete were taken along with the lights and everything else. So that's one of the issues that we face. I mean, it's a constant thing to keep things intact up there, and they'll come up there, and of course there's probably a couple of houses wired over there with the Cristo Rey wire that was stolen. But that's the whole thing, and that's the question: is that how are you going to secure any type of lighting that you put up there? And most people don't realize, it's an open range, and even though Border Patrol is in the area watching for illegal crossing, there's areas that, they may be watching when they're coming up another angle, another area to do this, and that's the whole thing, that there's no real way to secure, this mountain. We had a local contractor, it was a security contractor, that called and said that he would donate a $20,000 security system to be installed on this mountain. I said, well, great. What are you talking about? And he says, we're going to donate cameras, motion sensors, and, we'll have it remote controlled to, ring on your phone whenever it goes off. I said, okay, and what do we do when it does go off?
Yeah.
And he said, you can wait at the bottom of the trail and wait for them to come down. So didn't really understand, what went into this, and I mean, you're talking an open range, an open mountain that people can climb up from any type, any area. So something like that really wouldn't work unless we had security 24/7 up there to protect, any lighting or anything like that.
Which would be, again, like you said, a whole nother level of what has been done there and what is particularly feasible from a volunteer group at this point in time here.
Exactly. We're looking at, Powerball plus Mega Millions, or something like that.
Yes, everyone won that ticket. Make sure to give us a call here, and we'll be happy to talk further with you. So, again, that's Ruben Escandon here with us in studio. Got to take that next break of this hour. Coming to this break, closing out the show, telling you, of course, what some of the important details are and the other things you need to know. So stay tuned for more here on the El Paso History Radio Show, here on News Radio 690 KTSM.
You are listening to the El Paso History Radio Show, streaming on Facebook, where you can find archive radio programs. The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on the Facebook page Remember in El Paso When, run by Chief Administrator Barbara Given-Baney, known as BGB. Check out that page for thousands of archive pictures and videos of El Paso history. Remember in El Paso When on Facebook. Visit Mission Del Rey Southwest for a huge selection of El Paso souvenirs, decor, and gifts. Mission Del Rey features El Paso saddle blanket products and thousands of Southwest, Native American, and Mexico items, plus unique pottery, blankets, and turquoise jewelry. Bring your family and out-of-town guests to visit Mission Del Rey Southwest's large showroom at Lee Trevino and Pelicano and see their website at missiondelrey.com. 915-440-2140 for souvenirs, gifts, and decor. Mission Del Rey Southwest. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina serves the old Griggs Mexican food recipes in a new location at 6761 Doniphan Drive. Enjoy great New Mexican food with cold beer and the one and only margarita from the cantina. The managers and cooks from the original Griggs restaurant serve tacos, combination plates, and sopapillas. Get the best Mexican food in the valley at Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant and Cantina, 6761 Doniphan, near Loop 375. Call 877-2152. M1 EP Management Corporation is proud to sponsor the El Paso History Show. If you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, invest in real estate. M1 EP manages apartments in El Paso and helps investors buy, hold, and sell property. See the website, m1ep.com. M1ep.com. To learn more about the many benefits and long-term appreciation, call 915-592-4549. 915-592-4549.
Many retired El Paso area homeowners don't know where to begin when it comes to downsizing and selling their home. Patrick Tuttle and his Legacy Home team follow a proven process to help retired homeowners sell faster and for more money. Call Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850 today and get your home sold faster and for more money. That's Patrick Tuttle at 915-588-1850. Call him today.
The El Paso History Radio Show also streams on Saturday mornings on our YouTube channel, El Paso History TV. Go to youtube.com/El Paso History TV for archives of the El Paso History Radio Show. Also on that YouTube channel, you can see for free many other videos, documentaries, and lectures about El Paso area history at youtube.com/El Paso History TV. Additionally, watch a dozen TV documentaries about...
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for the El Paso History Radio Show, airing in this pre-recorded episode on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk, and of course, joining us here in studio has been Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. And again, the major work that you all do to make sure that stuff can happen on the Mount and with the trail, the monument, all of the things involved with it is all going to be on display again. That rescheduled for this year, or going back to a previous way it was scheduled, November 19th this year, a Saturday, to coincide with the feast day of Christ the King, which is, of course, what the monument is, what the trail is for, and what the significance behind it is here. So again, a lot of work goes into this here, and as you mentioned previously, donations both, and the food service goes towards support the continued operations of this trail, because again, all volunteer efforts and all things that, you spent more than a little bit out of pocket on doing these kind of things, because it is a both labor of faith and a labor of love and a labor of your generations of your family.
That's right. We do this, for people to enjoy, this monument, and we hope that people get back, to the tradition of what it was, a solemn, hike to the top, to be up there, to go up there, reconcile, and take a moment to pray. Thank Lord, for all the benefits and everything else that they get out of this. But it's an opportunity to enjoy nature, number one, and then enjoy the site and really take in what it's all about, the prayers and everything else along the way. People hopefully come out, and we want to invite people to come out and join us. Yes, it's an opportunity. I know there's some people out there that are thinking, well, we're not very religious, or we don't,
Sure.
We're not going to follow, the traditions, and that's fine. There's other events that also are hosted throughout the year, and if you just, follow that mountcristorey.com or follow us on Facebook as well, you can see that we post all the events and stuff that are coming up for times, that people can climb with there. There's no, not really a religious aspect to it, but there's other celebration of the mountains and other things that we may do, throughout the year.
Absolutely. And so the fact that this is something that is, again, now going to be able to be happening and going on for this year, and again, the rescheduled pilgrimage, again, still a good time to go out there, if only because of the services and other things that are available around there, though expecting a lot of people out there. You mentioned that, sometimes, 10 to 20,000 people. Any rough estimate on how many you're expecting this year, or is it too hard to tell?
It's hard to tell. It's a Saturday, and a lot of people work on Saturdays, and things of that nature. People have, games and stuff, football games and whatnot. So there's a lot of factors that take up, to take into consideration. So there's no telling. We really don't know how much, food to order, how many drinks to order, what to order. So we're going to play it by ear, and hopefully we're taken care of.
Absolutely. I dare say there's probably going to be a fair amount of people out there regardless here, particularly since, again, first real time since, restrictions have been in place and pandemic related issues. So I dare say there's going to be quite a few people out there.
I think
my
so.
Expectation.
I think so. The phone calls and everything have been a indicator that people are still interested. And even though, the date has changed, I think people are still going to make an effort to be out there, and we invite everyone to come out. It's an opportunity to climb when it's safe, and when it's, when there's people up there to assist if anything happens.
Absolutely, even if there'll be quite a lot of people. So again, that happening, gates opening at 9 a.m. If people actually want to make their way to there, of course, you're going into the city of Sunland Park. What's the best way to actually then be directed to the correct path to end up in the parking lot?
On Highway 273 or McNutt Road, there is an entrance, right across from the power plant. You can see there's big green signs that say entrance to Mount Cristo Rey, and that is a dirt road that leads up to the parking lots of Mount Cristo Rey. And
you will cross some train tracks, among other things here. Right. And again, it is a packed dirt trail, but make sure you got good bald tires would be a bad plan to head out there with that.
It is. You'll pop a tire pretty quick on those rocks up there.
Absolutely here. So again, joining us here in studio has been Ruben Escandon with the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee. As he mentioned, website for all the details on this, mountcristorey.com. That's MTCristorey.com. There also find them on Facebook under the Mount Cristo Rey Restoration Committee, same kind of MT.Cristo Rey Restoration Committee there for those details. Some more photos of including, what it looks like on the date and a little bit more detail on the monument itself here. So, Ruben, thank you very much for coming in to talk to us both about some of the liturgical differences, some of the history of the monument, the trail, and of course your personal and family's involvement over the years here today.
Well, thanks for having us, Andrew, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And and get the word out for people to join us.
Absolutely happy to have you on to talk about here. That's going to do it for our show for today. So thank you all very much for having joined us here for the El Paso History Radio Show. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We'll be back next week with more on the El Paso History Radio Show. So have a great weekend, y'all, and see you all next week.